There is a river. Edgar looked at Dr. Calloway. Dr. Calloway nodded his head. Go ahead, he said. We can't offer much else. Will you listen? And do what we can afterward. An hour later the reading was taken. Word of it had got abroad. There were more than 30 people in the big reception room. Many of them were members of the Christian church, which fee cases attended. One of them suggested that they pray. While Edgar went to sleep they recited, in subdued voices, the Lord's Prayer. The suggestion was given. Edgar began to speak. He could see the body. Sight was not gone. The solution used by the doctors was helpful. To it should be added tannic acid. Dressings should be changed frequently, and applied constantly for 15 days, during which the body was to be kept in a darkened room. After that the eyes would be well. When Edgar awoke, the doctors told him that tannic acid was too strong for use on the eyes. However, they were sure that sight was gone, so their objections were technical. They agreed to make the new solution and apply it. The operation could be postponed temporarily. As soon as the fresh bandages were put on his eyes, Hugh Lynn said, "That must be Daddy's medicine. It doesn't hurt." The studio emptied slowly. Edgar did not move. He sat on the edge of the couch, staring out the window at the sluggish, swirling waters of the Alabama River, as they came into view at the end of Broad Street. In a little while Gertrude came out of the bedroom and sat down beside him. "He's asleep now," she said. Together they watched the life of Broad Street as it moved below them. Sana was a quiet, happy place. They liked its atmosphere, its people, its broad, tree-lined streets. They had been happy there. There is a river. It was 1914, 2 years since Edgar had come to the busy city of 20,000 that marked the head of all year NA/igation. On the Alabama River, Selma had been the arsenal of the Confederacy. It was now an important freight center and the seat of Dallas County. Through its streets ebbed and flowed the purchasing power of a rich agricultural district. Its busy Ness streets were lined with wholesale warehouses. At its docks river steamers were constantly being loaded and loaded. Edgar was an agent of the H.P. Tressler Company when he arrived. He opened a branch studio for the company, but after a year bought it for himself. In the spring of 1913, Dr. Jackson declared Gertrude well, and in the autumn she came south. She liked Selma as much as Edgar did, and they decided to make it their home. Edgar had already joined the Christian church and was teaching a Sunday school class. On the roster of the Chinch it was the 7 class, and soon it became famous, for young people from all the other churches joined it. The class published a weekly paper called the Sevenette, which everyone in town took to reading. The story of the readings did not follow them from Hopkinsville. Gertrude conducted the check readings that were regularly sent to friends and relatives in Hopkinsville. Before Gertrude came, her brother Lynn, who was working in Anniston for the Louisville and Nashville Railroad, came to Sana on weekends and conducted the doctors who looked after them in Selma, Dr. Calloway, the eye specialist, and Drive Gay. A former army surgeon learned about it eventually, and listened in at times. They expressed no opinion one way or the other. What would they say now, if the reading were right? Edgar and Gertrude got up from the couch. They had there is a river been stricken by the same thought. What if the reading were W. Tong? TD better see about dinner, Gertrude said. The days dragged by. On the 16th morning after the reading, a white mass sloughed off with the bandages. Two brown eyes looked up at two anxious faces. I can see, Hugh Lin said. They gave him dark glasses and made him stay inside for another week. He was forbidden to go into the workroom. It was not a great hardship. There was plenty of room elsewhere for play. The studio occupied the entire second and third floors of 21% Broad Street. On the second floor was a giant reception room with showcases, tables, easy chairs, and a big desk. Next to it were the workroom and the stockroom. A back stairway led up to the family entrance of the having quarters. There was a small bedroom for Hugh L&N, a large one for his parents, a dining room and a kitchen. The main stairway led to the big room with the skylight, where the pictures were taken. The darkroom was behind this, and then came a dressing room. Another dressing room was in the main hallway. It was an ideal setup for placing cowboy and Indian. Down at the bottom of the main stairs, above the street entrance, was a large clock. When wimed, it ran for 8 days. Edgar put photographs on all the NRLs and let the clock run down. When it stopped, the persons whose photographs were nearest the two hands won prizes. Every one wanted to be eligible, so everyone had his picture taken. When he was finally allowed to return to school, and to play out of doors in the afternoons, Hugh Liam returned to his greatest love, the river. He liked to sit and watch the steamers dock. He would count the bales of cotton that Namphy till the numbers got too big for him to handle. In summer, there is a river. When the water was shallow, he roamed along the banks and played on the sandbars. In spring, when the floods came, he went with his father to make pictures from the bridge of the high water. The lowlands across the river were flooded then, and on his way to school, passing the big red brick houses of the old families of Sana, he saw the magnolia trees in bloom and smelled the sweet bud shrubs. In summer he went with his mother to Hopkinsville to visit at the hill, and his father spent the hot months canning fruits and vegetables. He liked to do that better than anything except making pictures, and there were always plenty of good thin GS to eat in the winter. At the hill he played with his cousins, Tommy House and Grey Salter. He liked them. But he was always glad to get back to Selma to see his father, and to enjoy the autumn, when the older boys played football and there were lots of people coming to the studio to have their pictures made. A few weeks after Hugh Lin's recovery, Edgar developed symptoms of appendicitis. Dr. Gay treated him, but said there was no reason for operating. An X-ray showed that the condition demanding surgery was not present. The symptoms remained, however, and on March 8 the reading was taken. It advised an appendectomy within 24 hours. The case, it said, was strangular. Will you operate? Edgar asked Gay. That's my business, Gay said. If you have the money, I'll operate. He was a friendly man, with a raumed stomach, a lean face, sparse grey hair, and glasses that magnified his eyes and made them seem to twinkle. We'll do it this afternoon, he said. There is a river. The operation was performed successfully. The diagnosis of the reading was found to be correct. The convalescents, Hugh Lin and Edgar, enjoyed the spring. Hugh Lin had developed into a checker shark and, under Edgar's management, engaged the cigar store Cham Pions along Broad Street. He won all his matches. Edgar did the cheering and coaching, and succeeded in losing his voice. He got one of his friends to conduct a reading. Gertrude was in Amiston for the day. The conductor, in giving the suggestion, said the body of Edgar Casey would be found at 22M, Broad Street, which was the address of the building across the street. We do not find the body here, Edgar said. The body is there, the conductor said, staring at Edgar. We do not find it, Edgar said. Describe the room, the conductor said. Edgar did so. The room described resembled the studio. Not at all. The conductor reached to the desk, looked at a piece of Edgar's stationery, and saw his mistake. When the description of the room at 22M was completed, he suggested that the body be sought at 21 carat. Yes, we have the body now, Edgar said. This we have had before. Now as we find. When he awakened, the conductor told him what had happened and showed him the description of the room at 223 carat, which he had taken down. The second floor had been specified. They could see its window from where they stood. They went downstairs, crossed the street, and entered 22 carat. Upstairs. A room answering in every detail to the description Edgar had given. A bookkeeper was working. His AP parents, even to the color of his suit, had been described. Without error. Ordinarily readings were few and far between. Most of them were for friends, or friends of friends, and there is a river seldom any remuneration. None was ever asked. Edgar and Gertrude preferred it that way. They worked for their living, as did all honest people. In addition, they helped friends who were in trouble, as did all good Christians. In this way of life they found happiness. They asked nothing more. Edgar was completely wrapped up in his SVM day school class and his Christian Endeavor work. His Group IA Christian Endeavor had the largest number of junior experts ever credited to a single class in the history of the movement. He was proud of that, and of the constant growth of the 7 class. He also enjoyed the letters he received from members of his old class in Hopkinsville. Many of them were serving as missionaries, and they described their activities for him. Often they asked for readings for themselves, their friends, or their charges. The first readings for people in foreign countries were given at the request of these former pupils. Edgar was pleased to find that he could locate an address in Mexico or England as easily as one in the United States. Once he was asked to Locate Signora Adelaide Albanese Ruggiero, Piazza del Campo al Falde Pellegrino, Vilno Albanese, Palermo, Sicilia. House is northeast and east. She sleeps on the ground floor. It took no longer to find her than had she been in the room. Soon Edgar was saying, "We have in this body condi tie-ins well fitted to demonstrate the power of mind over matter. For the principal strength in Tin's body is derived from the actual flexes and reflexes from the brain itself. The condition has been brought about first by that condition that has existed in the body for a long time, especially in the PDVAS and along the excretory organism in this region, the nerves and reflexes of the kidneys. Eventually all his friends in Selma heard about the readings, and many tried them for themselves, and members of There Is a River their families. One of these cases was the talk of the town. For a while, a sister of one of Edgar S. Sunday school pupils went out of her mind suddenly. The reading said she was only temporarily upset, owing to an impacted wisdom tooth which had not come through. It suggested certain sedatives, and advised that a dental surgeon take out the tooth. The girl was taken to Tuscaloosa, where her jaw was x-rayed in the presence of her aunt, who was a nurse. A physician was also present. The impacted tooth showed in the x-ray, and was removed. After 8 days the patient's mind returned to normal. Most of the people for whom check readings were regularly given had troubles of long standing, their illnesses were complicated, and their readings outlined many treatments. There was always diet, and there were usually medicines, plus massage or some other means of stimulating areas where circulation was poor. Often osteopathic adjustments were advised. Sometimes patients were instructed to take medicines or adjustments in cycles, on certain days of the week, or at stated intervals. Whether they followed these instructions Edgar never knew. They wrote to tell him that they were feeling better, that they had found one of the aids mentioned to be very efficacious, that they were planning to start all of the treatments soon. It was obvious that some of them needed supervision, others needed cooperation. Few were carrying out the readings to the letter and getting the results which were possible. Nothing was being proved, and almost none was being cured. It made Edgar think of Ketchum, who had been right in his ideas, if not in his methods. It made him think of Frank Moore, and the hospital he had begun at Norton 6UE. But all that was behind him. He was living the life There Is a River wanted to live at last. Dragging up old dreams would only spoil his happiness. Yet someone was always dragging him up. Once it was Dr. Gay. In the spring of 1915 Gertrude complained of symptoms of appendicitis, and Dr. Gay prepared to operate. The day before she was to go to the hospital, a reading was taken. It said surgery was unnecessary, and suggested that the capsules which Gay had prescribed be forced with 1/60th of a grain of another drug, and that they be continued as a medicine. Since the case was not yet serious, Gay tried the suggestion. After a week the S/TNTOMs disappeared. "You're doing this on purpose," Gay said good-naturedly. I think that subconscious of yours likes to play jokes. He sat down and took off his glasses. Seriously, he said, I think a lot about this thing. I knew very well that you didn't have appendicitis last year, and I knew very well last week that your wife did. Even the X-ray agreed with me about your MR case. Yet I was wrong both times, and you were able to tell me so by going to sleep. Your appendix undoubtedly had to be taken out, or you would have died. When I gave your wife the medicine you suggested, she got well. The boy's eyes are all right. They might have been, how? But we wouldn't have put tarmic acid in the solution, and we might have taken one of the eyes out. Do you know what it is, or how it works? Edgar repeated the explanation he was supposed to have given while asleep, as reported by Ketchum. Gay smiled. It's a law in action all right, he said, but in reverse, or sideways. Something's gone wrong somewhere, and this stuff runs out of you like water through a hole in a dam. We've all had the sensation of feeling that knowledge was around there is a river us all the while, if we knew how to get it. This seems to be one of the ways. I wish I were a little younger. TD like to go into this, and follow it through. But I don't know whether I have the stuff left to tackle it, at my age. He put his glasses back on. But somebody should, and I hope somebody does, some day. It's worthy studying. He was continually getting requests for readings from people who had met the Dietrichs. One of these came in the fall of 1914, from a lumber merchant in Lexington, Kentucky, named W. L. Delaney. Delaney wanted Edgar to come to Lexington and give a reading for Mrs. Delaney, who had been ill for many years. He wanted Edgar to bring a physician with him, if possible, to take down the Suggs tie-ins and inaugurate the treatments. Edgar wired Blackburn and stopped in Bowling Green to pick him up. Blackburn was willing to go, but had to give up the trip at the last minute because of an emergency operation. Edgar went on to Lexington alone. The Delaneys lived in Hampton Court, a dead-end street. Mrs. Delaunay, a patient, pleasant woman, suffered from what was vaguely described as swelling arthritis. Her joints and flesh were enlarged. She was paralyzed so badly that for 3 years she had not been able to feed herself, and for 5 years she had been unable to comb her own hair. She lay on a stretcher. She could not bear to be touched by sheets. Mr. Delaney, who was quiet and small, conducted the reading, taking down only the prescriptions and suggestions. There is a river for treatment. A physician was present. When Edgar woke up, he asked what had been given. Everything, Mr. Delaney said. Ever 37 thing, including the kitchen sink. You have something for every square inch of her body, I think. If we do all this, something has got to happen. 6 months later Edgar returned and gave a check reading. Mrs. Delaney called him in and proudly combed her hair for him. She was slowly getting well. Later a strange rash broke out all over her body. A check reading, taken in Sana, said an ingredient had been left out of the medicine's black sulfur. The lack of this had caused the rash. After another 6 months, in the autumn of 1915, Edgar again returned. Mrs. Delaney now could walk a little. She fed herself, and had almost normal movement throughout the upper part of her body. The rash was gone. During that visit, Edgar was introduced to a neighboring family, the Kahns. They were Reformed Jews. Solomon, the father, ran a grocery business and all his children helped him. There were 8 of them: David, Julian, Devera, Raymond, Yetra, Hazel, Leon, and Joe. Fanny, the mother, was a tall, handsome woman with the face of an Arab. She had been talking with Mr. and Mrs. Delaney, and she wanted to get a reading for Leon, who was not well. Edgar sat up half the night with the family grouped about him, telling tales and answering questions. David, the eldest boy, was especially inquisitive. He was 18, and had been studying at the State University in Lexington. The reading for Leon outlined treatments. When Edgar called to say goodbye, Fanny gathered her husband and children together and spoke to them. "We have seen a wonderful thing," she said. "I want you children to promise me that you will never forget this man. David, you are the eldest. I want you to promise that there is a river. You devote a portion of your life to seeing that the work of this man is made known to the world. The world needs it." "I promise," David said. Riding home on the train, Edgar puzzled over the scene. Back in Hopkinsville, several readings had been taken on the manner of conducting the business and making it known to the public. One of these had said that the work would succeed when there was a Jew in it. They knew no Jews. Edgar had never known one. But ever since then he had been on the lookout for a likable one, wondering who the fellow would be. The eager young face of David Kahn had impressed him. Was he the touchstone? Selma was a sweet narcosis for such thoughts. It reduced them to daydreams, and embroidered them with all sorts of pleasant fancies. A reading would be given for a mysterious person who only sent his name and address. The person would turn out to be a philanthropist, anxious to find a worthy cause for his money. He would build a great hospital in Sana, and there, after a great many cures had been effected, doctors would come from all over the world to study the treatments and get readings on diseases in which they were specialists. Sometimes the thought would strike Edgar that he ought to go out and look for the philanthropist. But he rationalized such ideas away with the facts before him. He had a wife, a child, and a business. He could not go off and leave them. Perhaps a man who was free of such responsibilities, like young David Kahn, might go out and find the philanthropist. Meanwhile, he was doing what work he could in the field before him. He gave readings for those who asked for them. He worked in all the activities of his church. He was a good neighbor. He was a sincere Christian, though imperfect like all others. He would live thus until the way to greater service was shown to him. There is a river. When the war came in 1917, it took many of his young friends to France, including David Kahn. Watching the members of his Sunday school class leave for training camp, he realized he was 40, getting old. He also realized how much he depended on these young friends. Slowly, in his thoughts and daydreams, he had been turning to them for the hope of realizing his dreams. He had never told them about these dreams, he would be ashamed to do that. But he nourished them with the youth he gathered about him. They wrote to him from the trenches, and told him how much the training he had given them in the Bible and Christian action was helping them in their homers of crisis. One of them told this story. Driving an ammunition truck up to the front one night. Through an enemy artillery attack, he found himself getting more and more frightened. To bolster his courage, he began to sing, as loudly as he could, the favorite hymn of the 7 class, "I Love to Tell the Story." His singing punctuated the detonations. Suddenly the tune was taken up on all sides of him. He was not alone. Soldiers were moving up with him, on both sides. They adopted the hymn as a marching song. And when the attack ceased and the air was quiet, it roared out into the night. The ammunition truck drove through to its destination. The war ended. And the country became filled with a restless energy that looked for new ways in which to expend itself. Soldiers began arriving home, looking for jobs. Some wanted to return to their old occupations, others, stimulated and made dissatisfied by their uprooting, wanted to seek greener fields. Might not this be a good time, before they all settled themselves again, to get something started for the readings? A hospital, perhaps? He himself was more of a family man than ever. On February 9, 1918, Gertrude had given birth to another son, Edgar. There is a River Evans Casey. It would have to be someone else who started things. Yet the itch to see something Imda way had got hold of him. The old wounds had healed. The itch apparently got hold of his subconscious, too. One day in March 1919, when he had not given a reading for several weeks, he went to sleep to give one diagnosis, and 8 more tumbled out of him voluntarily. 7 of these were checkups, and the requests for them were in the mail. The 8th diagnosis was for a new patient. The request for this reading also was in the mail. The patient was one of his female cousins in Hopkinsville, who was pregnant. The reading said that the dulled would be bomb and would survive, but that conditions indicated a very hard time for the mother, with a possibility that the birth would be fatal for her. Extreme caution was urged. The child, a girl, was bomb. In due time, the mother died. Finally David Ian returned from France. He wired Edgar from the transport, asking him to be his guest in Lexington. When Edgar got there, David was enthroned as the family hero. He had become a captain, and looked very handsome in his uniform. He was full of plans for the future, both for himself and for Edgar. His Moira urged them on. She had complete faith in the readings. Another child, Elia Nor, had been bombed to her, but Leon had died, because the treatments were not carried out. No doctor would administer them. "I do not want that to happen to others," she said. "What do we need to get this work in shape so the people can get the benefits of it?" David asked Edgar. "Whatever it is, it will take money." "That's what I've been thinking about. We've got to raise some money." "A hospital," Edgar said. He knew exactly what he wanted. He knew exactly what to say. "There is a river. A hospital where we can give the land of treatments the Readings outline, he said. If we had a place that would follow the diet, give the right electrical and osteopathic treatments and give them at the right time and give the medicines, too, then we'd have Summitlung. If we had enough money we could run it free. There's money everywhere, David said. How about the oil fields that are opening up in Texas? I'm going out there and look things over. It should be easy. There isn't any son who wouldn't give money to a cause like this. I have a friend in Atlanta. We could keep copies of all the readings and have people correlate the things in them and experiment with the medicines and treatments, Edgar went on. We coiled take sile readings on certain diseases. I told my friends in Clyarmy about this, and they were AU interested, David said. They are in AU parts of the country. We could go to different cities and present it to the people in them. They talked all night, each about a different thing, but in perfect accord. They left Lexington together, heading for Atlanta. David, he was now Dave to Edgar, exuded energy, enthusiasm, and optimism. They would make millions. They would build a hospital. They would NM it free. They would make a scientific fact of psychic phenomena. They would produce medicines and medical truths that would benefit the whole world. From Atlanta they went to Birmingham, from Birmingham they went to Selma, where Edgar pads the rest of his clothes while Dave explained their plans to Gertrude. She was dazed. Who is going to run the studio? She asked. Dad's coming down from Hopkinsville to be the man. Aja, Edgar said. I'll get a photographer to work for him. There is a river. Where are you going? Hugh Lynn looked admiringly at his father. Are you going to be a cowboy? He asked. His father patted him on the shoulder. No, we're going to find oil, and make a lot of money, and build a hospital where sick people can come and get well. How much money are you going to make? Oh, about $1 million. Hugh Ljatin smiled. Can I have a pony then? He asked. Hen Hugh Lynn stepped off the train in Texas. His feet sank in mud up to his ankles. His brown and white sports shoes were ruined. Hail, his father called. That's no way to dress in cowboy country. Where are your boots? Where's your gun? Dave Kahn called. Reach for it. They had come to meet him and drive him to the well at Common. They wore leather boots that laced to the knee, rough clothes that were stained with mud, and 10-gallon hats. He hardly knew his father in such an outfit. Edgar had gained weight and looked strong and healthy. Your mother says you're to look after us, Dave said. How can you do that without a gun? Our enemies are pretty powerful here. They've got the biggest cattle rusting gang in the country. They all carry 2 guns. Hugh Liam didn't answer. He was staring at the cow ponies tied to the hitching post at the station. Across the street he could see men who were dressed like cowboys. There is a river, except that Tlai didn't have chaps and weren't carrying guns. Come along, his father said. I want to hear all about home. How is mother? How is the baby? They bundled him into a big Marmon car and roared off left down the mud track that seemed to be the road. Hugh Lynn was bounced back and forth between his father and Dave. while he tried to shout answers to his father's questions. Above the noise of the exhaust, which apparently had no mujaya. Common turned out to be a crossroads rather than a town. The well was in a field, and it wasn't the sort of well Hugh LVNN was used to seeing. It was a massive wooden derrick, 60 feet high, which lifted and dropped a pipe into a hole, far too small for any respectable well. Near it was a small engine which made a terrible sound. It needed a muffler. Worse than the marmon. The ground as muddy. Water was pumped into the hole to lubricate the pipe and the bit at its end, and it was supposed to drain off into a homemade pond. But most of it wandered around through the black dirt, turning it into a stick mire when it comes in. Edgar shouted above the din of the steam engine, "It'll spout oil higher than the derrick." Hugh Lin wondered what was keeping it from coming in. It was now the summer of 1921. Why did it take the Ings so long to find oil, when other people were hitting it without any such help? That was what his mother had sent him to find out. He was only 14, and she had been reluctant to let him go. But her worry about what had already happened to Edgar finally overcame her worry about what might happen to Hugh Lin. Both were sure that Edgar was being used to give readings, without his knowledge, on things other than the oil well. They suspected that the well there is a river that was constantly about to come in, but somehow never did, was a blind to keep him there, giving readings on wells that were being drilled elsewhere. This, so far as Hugh L.T.M. could discover, was not true. Everyone was concentrating on bringing in the well at Conv. And most of the time Edgar and Dave were driving and the country, getting leases on the surrounding land, so that when oil was finally struck, they would have command of the whole region. When not touring in search of leases, they stayed in a group of double-roofed shacks about 50 yards from the well. These were the property of the Ringles, a terrifying family of gigantic men who worked on the well and had an interest in the company. Old Man Ringle, the father, was the biggest and most frightening of them. The smallest was Cecil, his nephew, who was married and occupied one of the shacks with his wife. Edgar and Dave and Hugh Lin lodged with Cecil. W. Heil, the TWM Ringle sons, stayed with their father. After his arrival, Hugh Lin was present at all the readings. All of them were on the common well, and they were accurate so far as predicting the stratum that would next be encountered in the drilling. It was on the strength of these predictions that the company's funds were being spent on leases. One thing about the readings struck Hugh Lin as curious. He wrote to his mother about it. "TM afraid to copy it down during the reading," he wrote, "and they don't pay any attention to it. But each time the reading says that unless all the people are in accord about the purpose for which the money is to be used, nothing will ever come of it. I have been wondering if it could mean that the well won't come in. How could it keep the well from coming in if it is being drilled in the right place? If the well there is a river keeps going down, won't it strike oil no matter what the men think?" He got his answer in a few days. There was trouble at the well. Someone dropped a tool down the hole, and operations had to be suspended while it was fished out. Old Man Ringle was mad. And he posted himself or one of his sons at the well every night, to keep an eye on things. Nevertheless, another accident occurred. The bit that was digging out the hole far down in the earth ceased functioning. It was broken, and its parts had to be fished up.